love is a decision. It is not an emotion. So if you're riding an emotion, you'll never go the long haul. Love is a decision that says, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I still choose you. I choose to stay connected to you spiritually, emotionally, and physically. That's what love is. Like is the emotion that makes you say, you can be with someone for the whole year and not really like them because of a change that they're going through. I don't think my husband particularly liked me sometimes while I was pregnant with my kids, but he loved me. So he said, I'm watching the ugly, and I'm choosing to stay.
The Touré show. Okay, though. The Touré show. Okay, though.
That might be the best question I've ever been asked.
You're a phenomenal person. I mean, you legendary.
I am a fan of you, my brother.
So when you're in a relationship, how do you deal with fighting? How do you deal with infidelity? How do you deal with your inner child, what your inner child expects and needs from a relationship, and what your partner's inner child wants and needs and expects from a relationship? Love McPherson is a world-renowned relationship expert who's been married for 41 years and is super happy, but more importantly, she's also a therapist who has counseled thousands of people on how to have great relationships. And she's written and studied about what it means to have a good, effective relationship that really feeds your soul. If you want advice and thoughts and knowledge on how to have a great relationship, Love McPherson is the one to listen to. We had an amazing conversation about fighting, about infidelity, about inner children, about all the things you need to know to have a great relationship. Let's get into it. It's Love McPherson on Touré Show. Love, how are you?
I am doing well.
You were named well.
Oh, yes. I love my name. At this point, it's more of a confession than a name, right?
So let's talk about how we love better, because you want us to have better relationships. So what are some of the things that we all can do to have a better relationship?
Of course, I'm going to say the cliche thing that you hear all the time: you have a better relationship with yourself. Okay, intrapersonal is so important in order to have an interpersonal relationship. So you gotta do that intrapersonal.
I gotta know myself.
You've got to know yourself. But once you know yourself, take the information and apply it to your desires for the future, and be real about yourself. So this is what I mean. A lot of times what I'm finding in relationships is this: people have expectations, but their expectations are according to what they hear will make them happy. What people are doing and they see and they seem happy, but they haven't discovered what would make them happy. For instance, I've been married 41 years.
That's amazing.
Thank you. And being married 41 years is not an amazing thing, because some of the people are cellmates, not soulmates.
Yes.
What's amazing is if you still like them.
And you're still happy.
And I'm still happy sometimes. And that's important, because you have to have realistic expectations. Nobody will make you happy all the time.
God, I had, I remember this couple that lived next to us, and were, like 2 decades older than us, had been together for a long time. And they said, and I was just getting engaged, and they said, yeah, sometimes you have bad years. Mm-hmm. And I was like, a bad year in a relationship? Like, wow. But, I think her message was, you stick it out through that.
Absolutely. The thing about it is, love is a decision. It is not an emotion. So if you're riding an emotion, you'll never go the long haul. Love is a decision that says, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I still choose you. I choose to stay connected to you spiritually, emotionally, and physically. That's what love is. Like is the emotion that makes you say, you can be with someone for the whole year and not really like them because of a change that they're going through. I don't think my husband particularly liked me sometimes while I was pregnant with my kids, but he loved me. So he said, I'm watching the ugly, and I'm choosing to stay.
You have 2 children.
Yes.
Yes, there were times when my wife was emotional or yelled at me or whatever, but like while she's pregnant,
Right.
I'm like, I am worshiping at your feet. You are, whatever you say is fine because you're going through it. I can't save you from all the pain and discomfort. I don't even know it. Like,
absolutely.
Right? And you're creating our family. Like, I mean, if some man complained to me about, oh, my wife was a bitch. Well, what's going on? Well, she's in the 3rd month. I'd be like, nigga, you better get your mind right.
You gotta.
Because that ain't her. Because she ain't her.
Exactly.
But there is a thing of, as a man, that you have to get used to, because before you have children, you are the center of her world, or at least the center of her heart. And then you have children, you are never again the center of her heart.
I think that can be misconstrued. And I'm going to tell you, I actually gave one of my clients an assignment to teach both her husband and her child. Like before, and I'm going to take you somewhere and I'm bring you back.
Okay.
When I had Tiffany, my oldest daughter, then I got pregnant 4 years later with my second daughter. My biggest concern was, oh my goodness, I'm a little nervous because I don't know how in the world I'll be able to love somebody else with the same amount of love that I have for Tiffany. I didn't know what that was going to be like, and I didn't want to shortchange whatever child was in my stomach. Now, what happened is this. What I wasn't prepared for, when my baby was born, the second one, there was a whole different reservoir of love that was untapped, that I didn't know I even had the capacity to do it twice that much inside of me. When a woman is preoccupied with a child, when she births that child, there's a whole nother reservoir. That doesn't mean that the reservoir that came from you has depleted. It just means that we have to focus on this. But keep in mind this, from the moment your wife was born and became a little girl, she was programmed to focus on that child. Literally, you give a baby a doll and say, you take care of that. Her focus is saying, oh, programming, that childhood.
And it's in us that we have to take care of the next generation. I would die for my children.
You would, but it's a different programming for a woman, because it's not the taking care of the child. It is the focus on taking care, the prioritizing. And she's not, as a child, taught, take care of your child, but also the man that's in the room. No. When we are holding those baby dolls, when we are dressing those baby dolls, when we are sitting there feeding those baby dolls with the bottle that doesn't really have milk in it, we are being programmed that when this happens to you and you place that baby in you forget about all everybody the rest else of the world.
I know. And I mean,
and you feel it.
I dealt with it and I understand it intellectually and emotionally, but it still does hurt a little that you're like, I am displaced from her life. And I understand that, if the house is on fire, she would grab them and I would be secondary. And I should be. We're here to take care of them. But you are primarily about them. I am primarily about them as well. But I've lost my place in your life.
Had that ever happened again, had that ever happened before as you can recall, maybe at a certain space, I was not as significant, the center of the world.
For my wife?
Nope, for you in your life. Do you ever remember?
When I was not the center of my life?
Of your parents or growing up or something?
Well, that's a whole other thing because I was not the favored child. So I knew that my sister was the primary one for everything. And she knew it too. And my grandmother mentioned it once. And my mom was like, what are you talking about? And my sister's over there laughing like, I know what she's talking about. And my parents, especially my mom, were the only ones who could see it. Everybody else could see it.
So then
So I grew up used to that.
So once again, you are now faced with being second.
Yeah.
So maybe it was even more painful for you to be pushed in that position again.
I mean, maybe, and maybe also, you're used to it, and now you're therapizing me. Okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute. You can do that
It's
if you
what
want.
I do.
You can do that. So let's give them something that they can really use, because every relationship, you love them, we're gonna come into conflict. We're gonna have fights. How should we fight? And especially, I think some of our sisters and brothers, for whatever reason, we may fight with a certain fireworks that maybe other communities don't bring. And I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of us, when we get mad at each other, it could be loud, it could be aggressive, not physically so, but I mean like what can we, especially Black couples, do to fight in an effective way so we are talking and then surviving the fight?
It's important to learn that relationships is, the word inside of there is relate, how we relate to one another. But we learn those as skills. We learn that in our family. So however they related, that's the first programming that we have. That's the first skills that we are learning, whether we want to pick it up or not. And so we either learn it and say, I'll never, we make personal vows to ourselves, or we just, by happenstance, we continue the progress. So first you have to stop and say, what was normalized in my home? Well, we weren't even allowed to argue in our home. We were allowed to debate, though. We were not allowed to, my parents, we didn't see them arguing. However, we got we said different things, and I noticed there was a lot of humor. So we looked really happy, and we weren't laughing a lot, but we were laughing and saying things that we really felt that we were not allowed to say. So there was suppression. So when I get into my marriage, and it's because I didn't have a model of of arguing in healthy conflict. I didn't see any conflict. We were not allowed to have conflict. So the only model that I had was my dad, who was elected official, and I watched him argue in council meetings, and he was brutal. So, but then he was friends afterwards. So I would go into my marriage story, and let me tell you, I would be like, me and my husband, I am prolific in how I can say something. So I can just tell and talk and get my point, win the argument. And then it's like, okay, honey, you want to go to lunch? It wasn't personal. And he'd be like, are you kidding? And I had to realize, well, this is not healthy. And afterwards, he's still feeling some kind of way. So I had to learn. And so what the first thing you do is, the answer to your question, you must decide, what do I already know? What's my default settings on conflict? Once you look at what your default settings in, you just decide, is this a win-win for our relationship? Because if one person loses, we both will lose because we're both connected. And so you want to reach a win-win. What will it take? It will take new relationship skills. So just like if I am out there playing ball and I'm using the wrong hand or doing something wrong with my skills, I've got to learn a new skill set. You have to learn the new skill set, practice it, and even if you mess up, sometimes you self-correct. You admit it, you humbly, and you practice it until you master it. The right techniques so that when you relate to each other, you don't leave a graveyard of bones of unresolved conflict and just harm that you've done to the marriage, because that's when it becomes, I will love you and stay with you, but I don't like you.
I feel like in conflict, we should avoid saying things like always and never.
Absolutes.
We should, as you're saying, remember that we're going to be together after this fight, or we hopefully should be together after this fight. We should try to stay focused on the issue. This is not the moment to bring in, I'm also mad about this thing and this thing, right? Like, we disagree about X. Let's talk through X. Let's try not to escalate Because usually I think there's one person in the relationship who will be the escalator.
Yeah.
Who will, I'm going to make it matter, louder, more physical. I'm going to make it louder. I'm going to add in cursing. And then the other person may or may not follow them. But like, don't be the escalator. What do you think?
I think that everything you said was 100% accurate as far as those skills. And we have to realize you get 10 seconds of hollering that a person hears you. After 10 seconds of your voice being raised, people literally close down.
Yeah.
So if the goal is to be heard, that's not the best solution. So you do have a choice. That first statement, how you respond to that. Say something triggered you, but how you respond, learn your responses, learn how to do that. Now, let me tell you, as you're saying that, as you're talking and you were saying all that, if I were to sum it up, what I would say is this. When I listen to your show, what I notice is this. You don't just listen to what the person is saying in order to just get finished with that answer. I sense a real curiosity from you.
Thank you.
And not only do I sense when I hear your show, I don't just sense a curiosity. I actually hear you as an interviewer, you are still even open, even though you may have set perspectives, you're still even open for a different perspective on certain things. So you're listening to learn. Now, I had other interviewers who are just going by the script. Now, let me tell you something. If you can take that method into a relationship where you are listening to learn, you are open for new ideas, you are genuinely interested in the subject, you are interested in your mate. If we took what you have mastered on this show into our relationships, it would improve astronomically.
Flattery will get you everywhere. but I appreciate the comment. And if I envision a couple, they went to a party, she doesn't like the way that he responded to a person at the party. You were rude to my friend. We get in the car, we get home, and she's like, you were rude to my friend and you embarrassed me. Now, does she want to just download that information to him to set a boundary of like, don't do that again? Or does she want, or he, to listen to say, why were you rude to Stephanie? Did Stephanie do something? Did she trigger something? Did we put you in a situation that made you uncomfortable? Well, yeah, Stephanie's husband makes a lot of money and she was flaunting it in my face and I felt very small. Now we understand why you were upset. Now let's work to not be rude to her again. But and I think sometimes the fight is just, I'm downloading my feelings.
Yeah.
Rather than, can we work together to figure out why you behaved outside of yourself?
And that is a mastery in relationship skills that many do not possess. First of all, the first mastery would be on the woman's part, which would say, I'm going to be vulnerable in this moment. However, in order to be vulnerable, to say, I'm not angry, because anger is a secondary emotion. You become something that makes you angry. You become a more vulnerable emotion that causes anger. You feel disrespected, you feel rejected, you feel lonely, which makes you angry or have an unmet need. Now, so her first skill is, I want to be vulnerable in this moment. Sometimes when I'm around Stephanie, I feel this way. And when you did that, it actually made me even feel worse because of this. And I'm not saying that you tried to do this, but in her presence, I need to feel that I matter or significant. Now, in order to give that kind of information to somebody, you hand them your heart and you say, please handle it with care. Now, if you had any experience in past or recent, and even with them, that they don't do that, you are not going to hand them your most precious part of you to say, You shouldn't know who you are. Boom. I can drop it. I can break it. I can hurt it. But you hand a huge amount of power in relationships, period. We hand people huge amounts of power.
Yes.
And we ask them to take care of it for the rest of our lives when we're married. Every day, I need you to wake up and look at my heart, not be dismissive against it, not choose somebody else's, well, I'm going to pick up her heart and then I'll be back to you. None of that. I need to believe that I am enough that every day when you wake up, you choose me. Now, if my childhood says not even your daddy would choose you, do you really think I'm going to walk in here believing that I will be chosen every day? Even if you're a good man who will. You will see something in me that I will not see in myself because I've been programmed out of seeing that.
Fights are also difficult because women are more verbal than men. And when the emotions go up, they remain more verbally dexterous than men, right? I think when the emotions go up in that register, men's verbal ability goes down, right? We're programmed, we're going to fight at this stage. Women are going to talk at that stage. So we're talking. So the man is at a disadvantage. Most women are much more emotionally intelligent than most men. So she knows how she's feeling. She respects her feelings. He does not code his feelings. He does not respect the whole notion of feelings. He just knows, I feel bad. She's mad at me. What do I do? So now we're dealing with even two different people than when we were both happy together, right? And that's a whole challenge for how do we get through that moment as a couple.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. With the different emotions that are programmed inside of us, even in the gender portions of us, we have to stop and say, okay, so how is this really, what will I give myself permission to go against? Because if you have been programmed as a boy to not express your emotions, not to feel your emotions, guess what? That doesn't stop you from feeling them.
Right.
It just alters how you express them.
Right.
So you learn to either repress really good, you become passive aggressive, you become avoidant, you become a denier, you become a liar, you become whatever it is that you use in order to not feel what you feel. But even if you're taught, say, not to cry, well, then where do you put the tears? Did anybody tell you what to do with that? No, you create your own way. So what do? Become busy? You put your tears inside of your work, or you put your tears inside of a cheating situation. You put your tears inside of something else. What do you do with the tears that they tell you not to shed?
Let's talk about sex in a relationship and the misalignment of sex, because sometimes there's a lot of frustration and resentment that comes from that. Either we are not having sex and I want it and he doesn't, she doesn't, or we're not having it enough for one of the partners, or we're not doing what one of the partners wants something done and the other one doesn't want to do that for whatever reason. How do we work through these sorts of misalignments?
We also have to understand our own anatomy. And 15% of women, only 15% of their anatomy, their libidos are higher than their husband. 85%.
In 15% of the cases, the woman's libido is higher than the man's.
Yes.
Okay.
But 85% of the women that you will see, their libidos are lower than the man. And in childbirth, a lot of times the libido can take 11 months to resurrect. So while you're feeling displaced, also the libido might have some issues. Now, 15% of those women, God bless their soul, I'm not one of them. We work towards our libido. Now, this is the thing, what I will say. After 41 years of marriage, of course that has happened in our relationship where our libidos are off. This is how we handle the situation. With sex, we both are empathetic towards the other. A lot of times relationships The biggest problem is unmet expectations. Sexually, we're talking about specifically, right?
Okay.
So you're expecting, now I'll be able to, because she's at my fingertips, I'll be able to have sex all the time. And when that's not met, that can be a problem. Now, this is what has to happen. We expect we're going to feel like having sex. Now, see, this is a taboo situation. I'm about to go down some territory.
Let's do it.
Because there's, well, I shouldn't have to have sex if I don't feel like it. Let me tell you something.
True.
And you're absolutely right. It is true. And guess what happens? This is how I conduct. My libido does not rule my relationship. My love does. My love for my husband and catering to his needs. I may not be hungry and still cook sometime because I know he wants to eat. But also that's in reverse because his libido does not run the relationship either. Because if I am here and I have traveled this morning and I'm on a podcast and if I fly back home tonight, his libido may say, I want it, but guess what his love will say? She's tired, I'm sure. I'll wait. So it's our love that should lead. If
For
the
sure.
libido shows up,
But
God bless you.
But we know, especially in long relationships, and we get a little bit older in life, sometimes the sex life goes away.
Absolutely.
Either completely or it becomes a wisp of what it once was.
And
What do we do? And the one person, as you described scientifically, generally it's going to be the man who's like, hey, I would like to have sex or more often. And the woman is like, and not in a specific moment, but like in an older couple, and I'm not talking about senior citizens, like it could be a year or two. We haven't had sex, like that's common. What do we do in that situation?
Genetically, just like you said, it's just one situation. But sometimes it's not about the sex. It's about the emotions. It's about hurt feelings, trying to connect with a person that you feel is coming to reap where they have not sown. And they only show up for the sex. A lot of women are going through that in their marriages where they're not touched. Okay, now.
So they need more romance to get to the sex?
They need more consideration. Not just romance. Sometimes we think it's just bring a flower, but if the flowers is a manipulation factor to get to sex, it still doesn't feel like romance. How do you actually treat me when you don't want sex? Do you hug me when you don't want sex? Do you bring me flowers just because of who I am or do you come for my body parts or do you come for me? And you have to stop and see. And you can feel and sense the difference in a woman. So that can be there. But also what I find in men, Touré, is this. After men get enough no's, then they feel rejected, they stop.
They stop asking.
They stop asking.
That's
and
dangerous.
Guess what? Also, when they come and they come to you and it's almost like disgusting they are not going to rape you. If they're honorable men. And if they feel that it is, you are not receiving me, that's another time when they will stop. So on both the answer to what do, we have to stay connected. We have to talk. We have to stay committed. In 41 years, me and my husband, we'll have that sex talk. We don't have any problem with doing that. And even after we began to grow in our careers and stuff and stressful, what do you need? You know what I need? I need to just relax first. A massage. He'll massage, but not to touch.
Yeah.
Just to massage. After, I'm like, oh.
But the sex talk is fraught also because if I ask you too much and we have a whole big conversation about it, and then you take that into sexy time and you're thinking about, he said he wanted, now you're not even in the moment, right? And now, so it's like, I can talk about this a little bit, but if we can't have an argument about we don't have sex enough, because like, that's gonna ruin your whole thing, right?
Absolutely.
So like the way even that we can deal with it is very sensitive.
The way that you deal, it shouldn't happen when you're deprived. It should be an agreement in advance, and that's how we handle it in our relationship. And a lot of times we have the notion that we are supposed to it's supposed to be spontaneous. I'm supposed to come in the kitchen and knock everything. And I'm like, somebody got to clean that up after, but really scheduled sex, we need to normalize some of that when we have busy schedules. We need to, and maybe you can make it romantic. Just because you know it's going to happen doesn't mean it can't be romantic. As a matter of fact, you can brace yourself for it because you know it's going to happen, and you could work less or reserve some of your energy and things like that. But the way that we market and brand what sex is supposed to look like all the time, it's just not realistic in a marriage all the time. First of all, if you don't stay emotionally connected in your mind, you will dread the sex. It is a lot of the dread happens because of hurt. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. It's not just about flowers. The other thing is, this is the real reality of it. What happens, sex is like, and happiness in a relationship period is this, the formula. It's kind of like taking medicine, a painkiller. There's a peak where, oh, this is really good. It's working. And then after a while, it goes down. That is a reality and a fact that they have studied. And so there is a peak in relationships of happiness. And then within 2 years, it goes back down right to where it was when you were single. You thought you were going to be happier because everybody tells you you're going to be happier in marriage, but actually it evens out. Now, when it evens out, the problem is this. People will say, you don't bring me flowers. That must be what it. You start looking for what it was that you're missing that kept you alive. And so what you have to do, you have to realize that everything is not going to be up at the top and at the peak, but you still have to make sure that you stay connected in the new you that you are as you continue to grow.
So in your work, you talk about racial trauma in relationships and the impact of that. Let's talk about, are there specific issues, challenges, hurdles that Black couples have to deal with that other sorts of couples aren't dealing with?
Yes. What I find is that a lot of times, especially for Black men, I'm going to go Black women and Black men.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of times for Black women who have grown up into homes where the father was not present, sometimes the father may have been present, but just not present for them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they have a whole nother family 2 blocks away that they take care of. So what ends up happening is, I find, and from my experience and the people that sit in my chair, more often that woman is deeply looking for emotional connection, where somebody whose father was there and present, they don't need the holes in their soul filled from the hollowness of somebody being there loving you. And so the little girl will lead the relationship desiring that man to really show up in a big way emotionally. The problem comes is when they attract that man, a lot of times he's dealing with some things himself. So the boy who maybe had to take care of his mom or had to step up as the man of the family. And not, of course, when I say Black and white, I'm not talking about all families, because neither one of our families look like that specifically, and many other people. But what I'm talking to you about, by the time people get to my chair, a lot of time this is what I am working with. And so what I find is that the man, because of his little boy and his deficits, does not even have the ability to fill the holes in her soul. And she is disappointed because she thought somebody was going to finally show me how special and significant I am. But his intrapersonal relationship with himself does not even allow him. Both of them come seeking for so much more than sometimes I find with the other. Now, in other races, sometimes I will find body image issues. I need to stay beautiful because this is how I was conditioned to attract. I need to stay, it is more focused on other areas, higher tolerance for certain behaviors, and where in the Black couples, there's a different level of tolerance for that.
Okay, that was great. There are issues that Black couples have that white couples will have, because sometimes at the end of the day, it's just a man and woman. So as a person who talks to a lot of black couples who are in crisis or just trying to keep it going, what are some of the big issues that you see consistently coming up with lots of couples?
The consistent issue that I see, unfortunately, no matter how big or how small it is, we have not dealt with our relationship traumas. We have not we will watch somebody, our mothers be beaten, dragged through the floor, and we will get up and see that, and we don't deal with it. We have not stopped to heal from it, and we will think that that does not affect how you enter a relationship, if you feel safe or not. The childhood, the relationship you see with your parents in childhood continues to affect you when you enter into your own relationship. That is the biggest issue that I deal with, because I see the inner child, the broken child, running the relationship. Because that child is going to keep you safe. It's going to be trying to keep you safe. It's going to be trying to counsel you. And the child does not have the ability to counsel an adult relationship. But we put the child in charge. We put
Your
the child,
inner child.
The inner child. We put the inner child in charge of whether we trust that person or not. So even if you did attract somebody who was and you're in relationship, in even marriage, of somebody, like I said, who treats you special, who is faithful, who is good. Some of the hardest relationships to work with is a person, and hear me on this, is the person who finally finds their person, right? And he is good to them. But they've had so many issues from childhood, even to current relationships, who mistreated them, to actually trust that this person is not too good to be true. So there's another level of anxiety in being in a relationship that is really good, because you're saying, I am going head in. I'm being invested in this relationship. My heart is here. If this one breaks, I'm wounded. And they don't necessarily have the skills to do it. So good relationships are just as hard to maneuver for them as bad ones. Well, bad ones sometimes are easier because they have the skills.
So we have to be thoughtful about, what is the relationship I grew up watching?
Absolutely.
And how does that, and you're going to carry that with you throughout your life. Absolutely.
And you will carry that throughout your life until you decide not to.
Do you see some consistent issues with mixed couples where one of the partners is black and the other partner is whatever else, non-black? Ooh, we got a long pause.
And when you say mixed couples, there's a lot of different mixtures, right?
For sure.
So I know the first thing people think is black and white. Probably some of the most difficult relationships that I have seen is when they are from other cultures,
right,
and somebody did not study the culture.
Right.
That is a really difficult, because I'm thinking, you don't even know how to interpret what you're experiencing. You didn't realize this is a norm in that country. This is how they were raised. What you're seeing is very normal. And the person has not studied the culture, and they're trying to have an American relationship with a person who is not Americanized. You understand? And so those are some of the difficult ones. Of course, the natural racism and having knowledge and things like that of white, black, that is a norm. But that's a lot of times what I find is there's an adjustment that was allowed, and a tolerance in those type of couples that don't always bring them to a very difficult counseling situation, not because they shouldn't be there, but because of the tolerance level.
I'm sure you see a lot of couples that are dealing with the aftermath of infidelity.
Oh, yeah.
How do we process and work through that? Because many couples survive that. Many do not, but a lot of couples can get past infidelity. So what do we do there?
Infidelity is a sign of something that was already there. That's just the weed coming out of the ground. It was there all winter. the weed was. It was just dormant. So what we first have to see is what brought this on, okay? Now, we don't want to go into that. But the survival, which is what you're asking about, with the survival part of it, the biggest factor is the trust factor at that point. And it can take up to 2 years, studies say, for somebody to learn to trust again, because the first trust is they have to learn to trust themselves because they believed you.
And they were lied to at some point. I mean, either tacitly or overtly.
No, but they believed themselves that they would be able to detect it, and
Right.
they let themselves down.
Right.
And when they let themselves down, the fact that you say, I'll never do it again, they don't know if they can trust themselves to believe or even see if you go back on your word. So their first relationship is with themselves to be able to say, how did you miss this? How did you trust this? What did you do? So once they learn to trust themselves, then they can learn to trust you. But during those 2 years, if you actually manage that, a lot of times the relationship is so much better. That's what studies show. It can be better than before because you had to deal with the issues that brought it on. The weed in the ground in the frozen winter, you have to deal with that and pluck it up, and then you can go ahead and move
Do you
forward.
find that black men cheat more than other races?
I have found that is what studies say.
Mhm.
I have also found that tolerance levels are different in different cultures, so there's no need for confession in some. It is a normalized thing, and even things that the woman says, but he's taking care of you. Moms train the girls. Oh, it's okay because, long as he's a good man, men do this, men are, and so it's accepted in some circles more where there's no need to report
I have
it.
seen some of the data that you're talking about. I saw a global study that said African-American men cheat more than any men in the world except for, there was some very specific sliver of men in Spain, some specific ethnicity in Spain that cheats even more than, but black African-American men more than any other group on the globe. But at the same time, black women in particular are more likely to take them back and more likely to break the relationship, to leave, if he cannot help with the bills than over infidelity.
Yes, I could see that. I can't see necessarily, not from my experience, that the highest rate would be African American men.
You don't see that?
Nope. I don't. Because I know that it is very normalized in some cultures. And so to report it as
So you're saying, well, French men, they don't look at it the same. They expect them to have the mistress, and so they're not coding it the same.
Yeah, I do think they're not coding it the same. I really do.
Okay.
I think that there are some expectations that this is how it is. And I understand that it's reported. I believe that it is a bigger deal sometimes for African American women. Now, I know you said, well, they'll accept him back. They'll accept him back, but he may not know life as he used to know it. You understand? And so I'm tolerating this. However, I'm upset with you. They will hold things in.
Yeah.
Where other races, you will simply be brought your meal with a smile. And so because this is how you were taught since a child, this is what you do. Because he's such a good person, he's a good provider, and so it's okay.
I mean, one of the examples I think about a lot is Beyonce and Jay. And he cheated on her in front of the whole world, and she was humiliated, and she was clearly angry. She talked about it for a whole album. The whole world heard that, and he apologized in front of the whole world, and we all heard that. And she took him back.
But Touré, when you're married, this is the thing. It's a different investment. There's a different level of investment. And this is why. When I was young, I was married in my early 20s. I was like, oh, you cheat? You are out. You are out. However, after this many years and understanding the realities, if my husband, I've not had to experience this, but that I've been aware of, if my husband did at this age, I don't know if that is something that, with this level of investment in each other, in legacy, I'm very sure I would be looking for the deeper reason at this point for it. It would be bigger than you laying down. If you were in love with somebody, we would need to really explore what happened, what failed us. That would be so much more important for me to know what failed. Now, do you think that I'm going to sit there and just say, oh, swear, did you? No, that's not how it would go down. But that would be.
But you want to know, are you in love with someone else?
Absolutely.
Or did you something just happened and you don't love her, but right? We gotta talk about what happened, not just the fact of infidelity.
Exactly. And maybe that doesn't interpret so well when they are surveying everybody else in other cultures. Mm-hmm. The fact, that wasn't an affair. I slept with somebody, but that's not an affair. You understand? I don't know what translated. What I do believe is that it is not just African American men that this is the highest and Black women accepted.
I didn't say Black women always accept it, but there seems to be there is data saying that they are more willing to accept that infidelity than he cannot pay the bills or cannot help with the bills. That is a death knell. And I think for a lot of Black women in particular, like, well, there's no reason to continue this if you're not participating over here, right? No romance with no finance. But this infidelity, I can.
And that a lot of times that goes back to your skill level. It really does.
Your skill level of
what you saw in your home. If you saw your father was a serial cheater, and your mother,
accept it.
You accept it. It's normalized. If you saw that even if you grew up in a house where your father didn't pay your bills, or he wouldn't pay child support, and you made personal vows, I'd never let a man do this to me again. You have lower tolerance for that. However, if you was raised in a house when your mother was the dominant figure, your father was at home or underemployed, and you are used to that, and that's normalized, you would probably more likely, and if you still loved your dad, you would still have the high tolerance level for that type of man in your life. So what the statistic what you're talking about is tolerance level and what is happening in homes in African American homes that allow the skill set for certain things a lot of times, or the zero tolerance for certain things.
So, okay, you keep coming back to the relationship you witness as a child will affect you as an adult.
That 100,000%. That's where you have your relationship skills. And this is the thing. This is a fact. What ends up happening is a lot of times we attract one of the parents that we had the biggest problems with. They will show up in the relationships and trigger us to make us grow, or we will go.
So are children of divorce more likely to have difficulties in relationships? Would you counsel people to say, if that partner you kind of like and you're questioning if they're a child of divorce, maybe not?
I would not necessarily say that. I would say, how did you feel about the divorce? How did you handle the divorce? There are some people who sit on my couch and they were like, I really needed my parents to get a divorce, and my mother continued in this relationship that was abusive, and I said, you should leave my father. Those people, this is what you'll find. Start cutting up. What I want to do is leave. However, they have the skills to stay. So a lot of times they will stay longer than they wanted to stay. But at that point, I need them to face, you know what? Relationships are complex. And when you find yourself and you look and turn around and you see, I am my mother right now. I am staying in a relationship that is hurting me. I am staying in the relationship that I told her she should leave from. That's when you apologize. You don't have to do it verbally. You apologize and you see, and then you make the necessary changes. Because if you didn't respect your mother staying, you will not respect yourself staying. So it's a very different wove. Some people say, some people will just say, hey, I'm not going to tolerate it. I'm never going to be my mother, and they will follow through on that.
And some people may, I don't want to paint a singular brush. Some people may experience divorce in their childhood home and say, I don't want to do that. And I am really focused on staying together because I experienced divorce.
Well, that was my father's situation. It wasn't divorce, but it was definitely a lot of infidelity. A lot of his father was a lot of infidelity. It was a lot of abuse and things like that. So my dad set out to say, I will never allow that. And he would brag about, oh, I'm faithful to one woman for all these years. And he had 60 years of marriage. He would brag about it. He was so proud of that. I know it almost feels like, well, yeah, you know.
For most men, I think that brag doesn't do anything. I don't think most men give other men credit for, I've been with one woman for 30, 40 years, like.
Yep, I agree with that.
Which is a failure of male culture, right? That we don't give each other props for fidelity.
Absolutely. And a lot of times because they have justified their own infidelity. So they don't see that I've done anything wrong. I just had to do self-help. And it's kind of like, when you're working with certain people where they say, I'm not going to go to a psychiatrist. I'm not going to get put on meds, but I'll just self-medicate with whatever drug they're using, the drug of their choice. And so they will self-medicate the pain of relationships. They will self-medicate. And first of all, sex is a self-medication because you get the same experience as far as the chemicals released as heroin. So sometimes people are using women to get high. Sometimes they are using them because they had a critical mom or father, and they've heard all this criticism. So when the wife, you'll notice a pattern of they start arguing, they go run out the house, and they go find that mistress so that she can speak into their ear and tell them what they need to hear and speak to the little boy and say, you're okay, I got you. And they come back. Now, I'm not going to just say that just for the men because it's the women, too, that this happens to. And so.
But women cheat for different reasons than men, right? And I think we see the man cheats sometimes because he is sexually or emotionally greedy. A lot of men love their partner and want more, right? And I think a lot of women like, that does not make any sense. No. Like, I love her, but I also wanted a second partner because it makes me feel like more of a man. I am more affirmed. A lot of times when women cheat, it's because they are emotionally done with the relationship. And but they may not be able to move on yet for whatever reason, but I am through with you and I'm starting my next journey. And it may not be with that man, but I am moving forward. It's a sort of a cleanser from the relationship. Is that what you see?
Absolutely. What you're talking about is called a bridge relationship. And so it's like.
For her.
For her. So what happens is she says, okay, I'm gonna plot my exit. I need somebody to walk me across the bridge to the other side. So she will enter into a relationship that's actually taking her across the bridge to freedom. Freedom land, okay? That's that Harriet Tubman move on her. And so she will get into that relationship to exit. That's her exit plan. Because a woman's need most often is security. She needs to feel safe. So she needs to feel when I get out there.
And to be rebuilt a little bit because I haven't been feeling the love and now someone is showing me the love and I'm feeling.
Absolutely.
But do you see also men who are cheating but genuinely, I love her and I want to be with her, but I also want my mistress too? Literally.
I have had men sit on my couch and they'll say, and I mean, famous guys, and they'll say, my mistress ended up calling my wife, and I told her, you are nothing. That woman, she is everything. She is this. They will brag and say, don't you ever hurt her again. But you're hurting her. And so they love that woman. They act like she is the trophy. They have her up on a pedestal, but they still reach. And so you have to let them see how the pain you are causing for a woman that you see as this to have power over your wife to bring her down. You hand her the power over your wife to bring her down and to stomp on her relationship with you, her self-esteem, her
it's so
stance.
hard. Even if they don't interact, the mistress and the wife, the Madonna and the whore, it's hard for women to understand. It's hard for them to hear. He can cheat and still love you and want to be with you. And it's not intended as a rejection or a hurtful gesture. I am greedy. I want more affirmation. I want more sex. I want more things, right? So much of being a man is acquiring lots of things.
Yeah.
Right? And I want both of you. And sometimes the mistress or the girlfriend or whatever is the yin to the wife's yang, right? And like, I hold my wife on a pedestal. I love and respect her. This is who I want the community to see me with. I don't want the community to see me with her, but the other woman, but I also like going into dives and doing weirdo stuff with her that you would never be my wife, but, and I want both. And I love you, wife, but I'm doing this other thing.
And that's when love is not enough. And a woman needs to say, this is hurting me more than it's helping me. And she needs to be able to have the courage to walk away. But guess what? What that man does will never help you to leave him. It is not about you've done something so egregious. It is all about, I have discovered who I am, what I'm worth, what I deserve. When you discover who you are, you will have the courage to walk away and stay. Now, let me tell you, I never tell anybody to leave. I don't care how many times. I've never, and I will never tell anybody to leave.
In a violent situation, wouldn't you?
Well, of course.
That's different.
I'm going to always inform you of the danger of staying. I will advise you, like, this is not healthy, this is toxic. I'll tell you.
But we also know that in a violent relationship, when she tries to leave, she is she is most in danger.
I have literally, because the woman has chosen to leave a narcissistic relationship, I have literally been on the phone helping her escape out the house. Okay, this is what so yes.
We respect that. We're not saying you're...
Yes, it was very violent.
Right.
So I would never tell them, but I'm just saying, I can't be the one to make that decision for you. You can't say, I'm gone because Love McPherson told me to go. You've got to decide,
not your role.
I am gone because I made the decision to go. I found love for me. I know what I deserve, and that's why I walked away.
There's a...
Male or female, men and women. And I know we're talking really gender specific, but let me tell you something. This thing goes both ways because there are women who have become hardened and have sex like men and cheat like men, and the statistics are almost the same at this point. And like you said, they're for different reasons, but not always. Sometimes it is just greed as well.
I have seen statistics that say men cheat more often than women, except if you include the emotional affair, which is generally not physical, but she is sharing and connecting with someone in the same way that you do in a relationship. And if you add that in, then the amount that women cheat is not the same, but it's a number much closer to the amount that men cheat.
Emotional affairs are huge, absolutely, for women. They are definitely
men don't even know what that is. But well, I mean, like, you know, with your partner, you see a news story, you hear a joke, you know, whatever. You want to share with them. You're texting them. You're telling them about your day. You're downloading your feelings. You start doing that with somebody outside of your marriage, that could become, you know, the office wife or husband or whatever. You guys are super close. She's grooming you. He's like, that's an emotional affair. And that can be corrosive and similar to the impact of a physical affair.
Yes. Now, I will say this. It's not as often at all, but there are men who are having emotional affairs because of the disconnection. And here's, we have to realize, now that the women are, is more independent. They are in the workforce. They are moving different. It's a higher testosterone level out there in the workforce and things like that. They show up. The relationships can be totally lopsided. And when you see that happen, a lot of times that's when you will see that the emotional affairs come in for men. When they're feeling like that they're just disconnected. And so I don't want it to be where men don't have emotional affairs, because they do, and women don't have just greedy sex affairs, because they do. But basically, we're talking in generalizations as far as the majority.
One of the stories that's really big online right now is the story of a woman who is referred to as Ballerina Farm. You know who that is?
I've heard of it.
She's this this white couple in Utah. She was a Juilliard ballerina, and she was really good, and she was training to be a professional. And she met a man who is the son of the owner of JetBlue. So this man has a lot of money. And he basically ripped her out of Juilliard and out of her ballerina dreams and her nascent ballerina career, and was like, come with me to the farm in Utah. And now they have like 8 kids. And she makes a lot of content, so we see into her life. And all these women are looking at this as like the ultimate tragedy, that she married a rich man and she pays for it every day, and giving away her dream and sacrificing herself and just sort of making food from scratch for all these little kids all around her.
So is she happy? When you look at her context?
I believe that she would say she's happy, but I mean, like, the chorus of women looking at this are like, this is a tragedy. And somebody did a whole post on it and was like, if you marry rich, you will pay for it every day.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've said that too. And that is if that is your only goal. Now, she did have options, it seems like. She had options, but I wouldn't just say that she's miserable if I haven't seen her.
Not saying she's miserable, but she traded her dream and being a ballerina at Juilliard, and one of the best ones. That's a huge thing.
This is what I'll say about that. Just because it's your dream, or who knows why she was at Juilliard, okay?
That's what she wanted, and she's on the farm still doing the ballet
did
stuff.
Did she want it, or was she?
No. That's what she yeah.
So if she dropped her dream for a person, and she's now feeling obligated to that is a miserable experience in life. If this is what she wanted, and this is what she does not want, absolutely, it's a tragedy. However, if, say, she was programmed to be a ballerina since a child, and what she really wanted was just to be a family, even more than she wanted Juilliard, then that's a whole different situation. And I guess when you are working with clients, you see so many situations that are off the path of the normal. This means this. Well, there's a lot of things, a lot of variables.
But I think we encounter more situations where women have a dream and then have to swallow that to become a mother. And more often where the man can have a dream and continue to pursue it even after children.
You do see that, and that's unfortunate. So, I mean, I don't have any argument with that, and it's unfortunate that it happens, but you're making choices, and there's something underneath that choice that you would give it up, for something that you're not happy with. I always have to go back to a deeper level than just you walking away. But why did you walk away? We would have to explore that situation.
I think some women are pulled in a life direction because the man is expressing more will, and the world is telling you as a woman are fulfilled when you are in a family.
Okay, well then that has to do with programming.
Yeah.
And so what has to happen is this. if she is being pulled by a man who is saying, this is what you have to do, this is your life, and she is submitting to that, she didn't just develop those skills with that man. Somebody down the road gave her the ability to believe that this is what is normal. For instance, if you are a parentified child, if you had to trade relationships with your parents because they were on drugs or whatever the case may be, and you didn't get a childhood, it is very normal for you to say, hey, you know what? I have to give up my dreams, give up my childhood, give up my life because I've got to go and see about you. And so when that man shows up and says that, it feels quite normal. I will trade in my life to make sure you're okay. And that's an issue. That's a real problem.
You, coming to the end, you have a lot of content about do's and don'ts of effective relationships. Let's give the folks who've listened all the way through, one or two really core takeaways of do's and don'ts for great relationship that we can say, okay, take this with you into your relationship.
One of the things that I will say to take into your relationships is, what are you expecting? Because unmet expectations is the core of everything. Even if it's, I expect somebody to leave, I expect somebody to stay, I expect somebody to fill the holes in my soul. Examine your expectations and then be realistic. Does your mate have the skills, the ability to give that to you, or is that something that you are supposed to give to yourself? It's that relationship with yourself. And I'm not even going into self-love. I am talking about an actual how you relate to you. Are you full of no grace? Or are you gracious to yourself when you fail? If you are, can you forgive yourself? You've got to develop those skills in order to transfer them to somebody else. So self-examine, self-assess, and then say, am I ready? I'm not talking about are you wife material or are you husband material. I am saying, are you person material for healthy relationships? Are you able to relate in a healthy way to anyone? Those skills start from the bottom up. Perfect your skills. Learn how to communicate. Understand your baseline. In any growth, you have to know where your baseline is. If your baseline is, I yell, I take, I withdraw. Know your baseline so you'll know where you're going. Set the new standards. What I do, and my husband and I do, and I do this with couples, a SWOT analysis. On an annual
SWOT analysis.
Yes, that's a business thing. Strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. I would say always understand, as your personal and as a couple, your strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So what strengths do you have? A lot of times what you'll find is even in the midst of traumas, you've actually developed some strengths as well, not just weaknesses, not just pains. You've developed the ability of stick-to-itiveness. You're creative. You know how to make something out of nothing. Okay, so that's a strength. But you can take that into a relationship to constantly keep the relationship alive. Weaknesses, where am I weak in? What are my faults? Create spaces, therapy, education, other places where you can actually strengthen the weaknesses so the weaknesses don't overpower the weakness don't overpower your strengths. Opportunities. What are some opportunities for growth for yourself and for your relationship? Where are the opportunities? Is it in therapy? Is it in counseling? Is it at the movies? Is it at the theaters? Where is some opportunities? Dating more, sex, more communication, more time apart from the kids, on date, putting boundaries. And then the strength, weakness, opportunity. What are the threats? What are the threats? That's when you have to know your environment. What is the atmosphere? What are my temptations? What am I prone to do? What am I trained as a default to do? Those can be a threat to your relationship. You've got to stop and examine. So we examine our strength. weakness, opportunities, threats. In 41 years, they look different because I'm not my 21-year-old self. What was a threat to me at 21 is not still a threat to me right now. And so what we have to do is continue to self-examine, to continually self-improve and move forward in the relationship. We got to work this thing. It has to take work. In order to continue to like somebody, you got to continue to work. You got to work on that like.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
It's such a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. That was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Hey, if you like what you saw today, be sure to check out more Touré Show content right here. Don't forget to click that subscribe button for more Touré Show content every week.